Hi guys, I hope you are all well. For this video, we will explore into cost elements, together with ABC. It's not die-spot catching, but activity-based costing. At the end of this topic, you should be able to calculate overhead absorption rate and calculate overhead using activity-based costing method. This lecture will delve into traditional method as well as activity-based costing for calculating cost for overhead. As we had learned from topic 3, costs traceability can be divided into two: direct cost, which can also be described as prime cost, and indirect cost, which also can be described as overhead. Overhead is usually classified into four groups. First and foremost, production overhead, which defined as cost incurred in production, for example, indirect material, indirect wages, and insurance of plant. Secondly, administration overhead, outlined as cost incurred in the administration office, for example, account clerk salary and audit fees. Next, selling overhead, defined as cost incurred in securing orders, for example, advertising cost, sales commission and catalog. Lastly, distribution overhead, outlined as cost incurred from the time the product is completed in the factory until it reaches the customer, for example, transportation charges and packing costs. So, what is traditional costing method? Traditional costing method typically used one rate to allocate overhead to products. This rate was often based on direct labor hours, or direct labor cost. This made sense, as direct labor was a major cost driver in early manufacturing plants. So, how it's been implemented? There are only two stages in traditional costing method: identify, then compute. Cost is identified whether it is a job order costing or process costing. For job order, direct labor hour or cost is assumed to be the relevant activity base. For process costing, machine hours is the relevant activity base. After that, compute overhead absorption rate, or by dividing total overhead cost with activity based. It is a direct labor hour, or cost, or machine hours implementation. Now, we will learn about ABC. What is definition of ABC? ABC is a process of identifying the costs of all activities and allocating, applying, assigning or tracing costs to product. Take note, the assumption of this method is that products cause activities, activities cause costs, and therefore activity is related to product cost. This type of costing or technique is highly debated to be used in determining overhead, as traditional costing is perceived as inadequate and unsophisticated to charge overhead. Shown are example of cost driver. Cost pool is cost associated with each activity and gathered together. Cost driver is the unit of an activity that causes the change in activity's cost. All activity based on material procurement are gathered together, classified as number of orders for its cost driver. All maintenance activities are pooled and classified by number of maintenance hours as cost driver. Students, please take note that in a traditional costing system, all of these production overheads would be absorbed on production volume, measured as direct labor, or cost, or machine hours. So how ABC is implemented? There are two additional stages in ABC, as opposed to traditional method: identify, determine, compute and assign. I repeat, identify, determine, compute and assign. You should remember this properly, as ABC calculation is a popular topic in final exam. First, identify the major activities that take place in an organization. Second, determining the cost driver to each major activity. Third, compute overhead absorption rate by dividing activities with cost driver. Fourth and lastly, assigning the cost of activities to products according to the product's demand for activities. Now, let's learn advantages and disadvantages of traditional method. Traditional method is easy to implement, just need a space and a good filing system. For disadvantage, it is not as accurate as ABC systems. This system results in significant undercosting and overcosting, when costs of performing all of the diverse activities will be contained in one cost pool, and will be divided by single bases. Traditional method is outdated costing system in many companies, because manufacturing companies now use machines and computers for much of their production, instead of labor. It also leads to bad management decisions because it excludes certain non-manufacturing costs. Let's go see what are the advantages and disadvantages of ABC. Advantages: ABC applies multiple cost drivers to ascertain a more reliable product cost. ABC provides an opportunity to trace the costs to the activities that cause the costs. ABC method eliminates allocating irrelevant costs to a product. ABC include an easy interpretation of cost for internal management, the ability to enable benchmarking and a greater understanding of overhead costs. Some criticism on ABC, which follows: ABC difficult to determine the most appropriate cost driver. Implementation of ABC involves high expertise and high costs. ABC's uses large amount of historic data and may restrict future decision. Let's recap. First, we learned about overhead and its classification, which are production, administration, selling and distribution overhead. Then we learned about definition of traditional costing and its two stages, which are: first, identify whether job order or process costing. Then compute overhead absorption rate. Next, ABC's definition, assumption and example of cost pool and its cost driver had been shown. 4 stages of ABC had been outlined, which are identify, determine, compute and assign. Lastly, we had discussed about advantages and disadvantages of traditional and ABC method. On next video, we will learn on how to calculate using ABC method. Okay, thanks for your time and let's head to next video, topic 4 part 2, ABC calculation. Do like and subscribe to my channel.